Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. On this episode, we're talking to Candice, the owner and host of the Boho AFrame out in California. And while I thought we'd dive into West Coast cabin culture a bit, we actually spent almost all of our time talking about hosting. I've learned over the years that it's hard to find friends who can relate to this weird, urgent, joyful, and sometimes stressful life of being an Airbnb host. So Candice and I loved diving into all kinds of hosting topics. So much so that we didn't even come close to covering it all in this hour-long episode. If you're currently hosting an Airbnb or thinking about hosting at an Airbnb, or you're just a guest at Airbnbs, or you're intrigued to hear more behind-the-scenes talk about hosting, then welcome. You're in the right spot, and this is definitely the right episode for you. As always, thanks so much for joining us. Let's do it.
All your dog all cozy over there.
I know, look at him. That's not even a real fireplace. Do you see that?
Yeah, it's cool though.
Before we got a wood stove at this house, I got that for my studio because it was always cold there. And I saved my Amazon points for really unnecessary things that I want.
Same. I did the same thing. It's like a treat.
Yes. You can't judge me, Sean. It was points. It was pretty much free.
Basically free, and it was a splurge on something I know not super logical, whatever.
Yeah. This is my reward for spending too much money. So there we go.
So accurate.
Okay,
Is it actually put out some warmth?
Yeah, it does put out warmth, which is why she's right in front of it.
Love that.
She gets so cold. I didn't know this about Chihuahuas, but they like shake all the time when she's nervous. Okay. Like your backdrop is very seasonal.
Yeah. My daughter and I decorated for Christmas.
I love it. I love it. How old is your daughter?
She's 3.
3. Okay. And you have a little one too, don't you?
Yeah. He's, I think he's just 5 weeks now.
Okay. Yep. Oh, he's really little. Thank you for doing this.
I just had him.
Wow. Okay. All right, let's get to it. Your time is very valuable. I always like to respect people's time, but 5 weeks,
whatever.
Like fresh out of the womb.
This is a much welcomed break right now. So
okay, good. Well, welcome to the podcast. I'm so excited to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too.
So let's start. It's funny as I'm prepping questions, I always notice based on the pre-interview and what I know about folks that they always tend to go in one direction, and yours went heavy in the hosting direction.
Nice.
So we're going to be spending a lot of time there. But before we get there, I always think it's really helpful for people to have context. Who you are, what your experience hosting is, in your case, what your experience traveling is, because that actually shaped a lot of your experience. So let's start there on the personal side and just take us back to the family cabin that kind of started it all with some of your core childhood memories.
Yeah. So, hi, I'm Candice, host and manager of Boho AFrame. But yeah, so honestly, like my husband and I, we were very young when we bought our cabin. I was only 22 when we bought Boho AFrame. So
was it your first house? Because you mentioned that you bought your first house at 22.
Yes.
And it was this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
It's a multi-family. So there's 2 houses on our acreage. Anyways. Okay. So when we were house shopping, we weren't actually really like necessarily seeking a cabin. It just kind of worked out. But I do have fond memories of cabins because growing up, before Arrowhead was like really a big deal. I mean, I feel like there wasn't as many people. My parents owned like a little rickety cabin in Arrowhead. I don't honestly know how they were even able to afford to own it over there. I think they might have bought it because it was like way cheaper to like own a house in the mountains, and it was like they were advised that was good investment and whatever. So I have vague memories of being like, I think I was probably like 7, and we would go up to this cabin, and it was like plywood walls. Every time we went, my dad had to get the heater to work again. We like slept on this loft that was super, super low towards your head for me as a kid. And we slept on like those blue gym mats you would like play on in PE as like a family up top. And there was like this ongoing joke because my dad would always, every time, without a doubt, when he walked into that loft, duck and hit his head every time. So we were always like just laughing at him, and like it was just a shack kind of cabin, and I have just fond memories of that. So The A-frames kind of brought some of that like back to life. Just like that character and the like family vibe of cabins. So yeah, it wasn't like I was like, oh, I remember that cabin when I was growing up. I want to own one. It was just kind of worked out. And then it's just like the memories and the experiences kind of like tie together. So yeah.
I love that. I'm going to mute myself when I'm not talking because my allergies are so bad. And I just got a text from someone checking into the cabin who said the code isn't working. So give me
Oh
1
no.
second.
Okay, take care of that first. There's always something when you're hosting, man.
Always. And you never know. He's typing already. I'm certain he's going to get it to work. It's one of those things. It's just when they're checking in, and we just got, I'm going to ask about this in a second, but we just got our first 4-star review. And so I'm like totally on edge of like, this one needs to go really well.
What kind of lock do you use?
We use a old school, just classic. I've wanted to use the electronic ones, but that's what I use at my house. I used to use at my old house. And whenever it would run out of batteries, like if you didn't have the key, it was just like a big disaster. So I have like nightmare scenarios of like my cell phone won't get service, so won't connect.
It's so true. Like nightmare, there's always nightmare scenarios running through your head as a host. At least if you're a good host, I feel like there is. If you're not a good host, you just don't care. But
we've been using the same lockbox for 2.5 years and have not had one person not be able to use the code. So I'm very confused by this. But he's staying for only one night. So I feel even more pressure of like everything needs to be perfect. You don't have like a week of memories in case you can't check in smoothly.
I feel like one-nighters are harder to like it's harder to have them be satisfied with their stay.
I find it so interesting that so many of us and people I've talked to have memories of childhood cabins, and they're always more rustic. They're like not winterized. They're like everyone cramming in. And now we're running these cabins that arguably could be described as luxurious. I have thoughts on why that might be the case. Do you have thoughts on that connection?
On what connection, why we end up with cabins from as like when we've had them in our childhood, or
why we end up with luxurious ones. Like we have all these fond memories of roughing it, and yet none of us seem to be creating cabins where you rough it.
Yeah, I mean, in my situation, I think we were roughing it in cabins growing up because we didn't have the luxury of making it bougie. And we just like, I don't know, my dad's very much someone who makes the best of like whatever it is. So I feel like that's why ours was more roughing it. I'm sure he would have made it more bougie if we like spent more time up there, or if he had the money to like invest in it, But yeah, I mean, for us, our cabin's bougier because it was from the 50s and so run down when we got it that we had to like bougie it up for it to be what I would say is livable, So it's like, it was in such crummy condition when we got it, we had to make it nicer, where it's like, hey, if it's good enough, it's good enough,
Right. And I think honestly, Airbnb has changed a lot of this because back then our family cabins weren't being rented. They were just for our families. So in order to afford it when you had young kids, it was like, this is what we can afford and we're going to make the best of it.
Yeah, that's exactly what my family did. We just like made fun with what we had, But I also think that you bring up like Airbnb and stuff. Now we have social media and these like online platforms that like, make things Pinterest worthy and stuff. Like we have this, I don't know, need to make things look more beautiful than they have to be sometimes, maybe.
So yes, I totally feel that. And yours is very much fits into that category because you have like 7,000 Instagram followers, which clearly doesn't happen unless you have beautiful photos. So like you look at your feed and it is full of that, right? So you've done that really well, but it does create this pressure that makes it hard to compete with everything else you're seeing and like make it stand out for guests.
Yeah. Yep. I think like part of my like wanting it to be so picture perfect too is that it was so imperfect to start, that we put so much work into it, and it's like, okay, now it's beautiful and it's taken care of and it's not like this rundown 50s cabin that's just like not been touched forever, But and part of it too is like wanting to genuinely like depict an experience people can have there, So, but I think the pressure to make it look so picture perfect is because that's what people want these days. They want to show up. They want it to be picture perfect for their social media. Like people aren't happy, at least in my experience, with like more of like a rustic roughing it. Like they're just not as easygoing, it seems like, as they could have been. So we're like, I'm kind of an easygoing traveler where like I don't mind roughing it a bit, but a lot of people don't like that, especially the type of guests that I get coming to my space, because I get a lot of city folk from like the two big cities on like north and south of us. So They're
Well,
not as much as definite types.
yeah. And probably part of that is also just the property that you've created is
Yeah.
really nice. So the folks
Yeah.
who want something more rustic are probably not going to pay as much to get
Yep.
someplace really fancy when they're like, I can
Yep.
get something that I like for half the price.
Yeah, and if you make it nicer, you can charge more too. So from a business perspective,
That's
that
right.
makes sense too. So
That's what I was also thinking about is that like
yeah.
at the end of the day, there's only 365 days in a year. I think about this all the time. And so from a business perspective, if part of your intent is business, then you can't add more days if people really like it, or you can only make so much money at a certain price point. So we're
Yep.
always thinking about that. We have already moved into the hosting. See, I knew we'd
Yeah.
have a lot to talk about on the hosting side, but I want to ask a couple more questions before
Yeah.
we fully dive into all the
Okay,
tips.
let's do it.
But what first prompted you to think about a short-term rental? And it sounds like it might have come from your past travels. Can you walk us through that at 22? You're so young, I feel like, to do this.
Yes.
What brought you
Right.
there?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of an old soul and I've done a lot of things young compared to the norm. So, yeah, but we had traveled a lot. I love travel. I'm like a big fan of international travel. We would go to a few countries every year between work and um so we had just had good experiences in short-term rentals, and I mean we also had not great experiences too, so it teaches you what you want to do as a host or not really. But so I had really loved that. And I guess I kind of have to tell you the story how we got this place. So, my dad's a contractor and he had renovated some porches on this property that we own now. And like made it suitable for renters for the son who had inherited the property from his family. So he knew of the property, and at that time, the son who just inherited was like, "Hey, do you want to buy this and take it off my hands?" And my dad was like, "Oh no, the wife wouldn't go for it," kind of a thing. So fast forward, like, I don't know, a decent amount of time from then, we were looking for a home, not having like a ton of luck finding something necessarily in our price range or like what we were looking for. My dad was like, "Oh, there was this really cool property. It needs like a lot of work, or it did at the time. I wonder if that guy still has it. Like he'd offered it to me." Anyways, so long story short, we ended up purchasing the property from him. We put a lot of work into the property before it was even ours. So like he could have totally bailed and like we could have put money into it, renovated it, tented it, like done these things to it. And then he could have been like, "I'm putting it on the market." That would have really sucked, but he didn't, thankfully. He followed through. But so we put money into it to make the sale go through so we could buy it from him like direct. We didn't use realtors and stuff. And so when we bought it from him, there were tenants in it. And so in California, that can be very complex. And so,
Tenants in the whole property or in, because there's kind of two houses that are like
yeah,
right near each other.
yes. So we live in one of them, and then the A-frame we short-term rent. And so each of them had tenants in them.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so the tenants in the house we live in didn't want to leave. So we had to start the process of an eviction, which is really, really complex in California. And we talked to an attorney about it, and he was like, "This is like one of the hardest things to do in our state, like legality wise." And we're like, "Okay, great." You know, we were kind of naive, honestly. Had I known, I probably wouldn't have bought the place. It all works out though. Anyways, so
Wait,
we ended
quick
up,
question about that. Is there
yeah,
like a compromise you can come to with them? Like, were they willing to negotiate where it's like, hey, we'll give you an extra 6 months because we know this isn't ideal? Is that what ended up happening?
basically, yeah. So we gave them more time. We ended up like bringing like a trash, I don't know, not a trailer because it was like a straight end of a semi. We bought that and brought it here. And
Like
they
a
like
big dumpster?
yes, not even like way bigger than a dumpster, but yeah. So we like helped them essentially take all of their crud out of here because it was not an ideal situation. And so we helped them get their crap out, and we helped them move. Like we packed up all their stuff with them and like assisted them in finding a place to rent and everything. And we like essentially helped them do it because like had we not worked it out with them that way, we probably would have been stuck like providing them with utilities and not having a place to live while paying the mortgage there. Mind you, Wyatt and I were newlyweds at the time, living at my parents' house when we were doing all this. So that was really fun.
Living the dream right there.
Yeah. So anyway, so I learned a little bit about being a landlord in the process of buying a home. And I was like, oh, I really do not want to have a renter right situation again, because I have just touched the tip of the iceberg on that and learned like, oh, this is like not good if they stay and don't like essentially follow your rental agreement and whatever else. So that gave me a taste of that really early. And so I was like, I don't want a long-term rent. And so once we got around to renovate, because we renovated our house, like, I don't know, 60% of it before we did the A-frame, across like a few years. And then we flipped the A-frame and then started short-term renting that. And so there's a few reasons we decided short-term rent the A-frame. One was it's not super practical for long-term renting. There's no like washer and dryer. There's like very minimal storage. It was built, it's like the original property that was like built here, you know, that our house didn't exist before. They built that later on. This used to be their vacation home, and then they built our house next door to live it full time later on. So it just was designed to come and go from, and it was like a very simplistic design, not really ideal for a long-term renter in a lot of ways. So that was
what we were talking about with family cabins. It was someone's like old school family cabin.
Plywood walls, like, yeah, they actually did some really good electrical in there. Love that. But anyways, so it was like, it was rustic, but it could have been worse. But yeah, so that was one reason. And then we had loved traveling and staying in short-term rentals ourselves and used Airbnb a lot. And we loved it and had really good experiences doing it. So I was like, wow, cool. I could do that. And I could provide like a fun, unique stay that guests could enjoy, like I've done over the years and like all these different places I've been to. So it was kind of like it came full circle. I was like, this is exciting. Like I get to be on the other end of what I've done so much, you know? Yeah. So that was kind of like the big motivator was having to go or start the process of evicting a tenant, and then the impracticality of the A-frame being long-term rental, and that I liked short-term renting, you know?
Yeah. So, well, and in your setting with you living on site, it could be really annoying to have long-term renters there. But what an advantage for a short-term rental to be so close to help with anything. Okay, I see your facial expression. Tell us what might not be advantageous about this.
I actually feel the opposite way because, okay, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells when I have short-term renters on site because I find that people can feel really protective of privacy, which I totally understand. And so I feel I don't like want to go in my yard, or like I don't want to like run into people because which is interesting because I just feel like this is like a culture in the States. Like if people from out of the States are not like this, and traveling to short-term rentals out of the States is really, in my experience, not like it. But I feel like people within the US, they don't want to see you. Like they don't really want to socialize with you. And they're like very like, oh, it wasn't private if you live on site and you literally never saw them. And like it's awkward. Like, but it's not awkward because I'm awkward. Like I will totally be like, hi, how's your stay? Like, you know, would you like some cookies? Whatever, like, you know, but I feel like with short-term renters, I'm more like conscientious of like not appearing to ever live at my house because I want them to like have their privacy.
That sounds really hard.
It's not. I mean, it's like obviously I choose to do it, so it's like it could be worse, but it is kind of like it's weird. I almost sometimes feel like a stranger on my, like a visitor on my own property. You know, it's more theirs than my own, which is fine. But yeah, I feel like if I had a long-term rental, which we did, we had a couple of cute old ladies rented it from us. They had stayed in it. Yeah, they were super sweet. They rented it and they were nice. Like, you know, we would just chat and talk and we knew each other, and it was like more like family vibe, neighborly. It was more neighborly when it was renter. So I don't know. There's pros and cons to both, really.
Yeah. It's interesting because when you rent in, my first experience was renting in my house. And I thought that was a really good way to start because first of all, I think that every good review actually comes down to just communication. And like, yes, you need to meet their expectations, but even when expectations are unmet, like unexpectedly, a lot can be solved via communication. So I found my first rental was like a room in my house on a futon mattress, like not fancy at all, but we got almost all 5-star reviews because they had all met us, right? So that's like a huge advantage. But if they're not inside your house where they absolutely expect to see you and they're right next door, it almost is like the trickiest situation because they want to pretend like you're not there. And so you're trying to respect that versus in your house, they're booking that because they want to be in the same house with a host.
Yeah,
they totally get
like, I'm so clear on our listing, like, hey, we're right next door. Like we might run into you, but I err on the side of giving you privacy unless you want to say hi, you know, but it just doesn't suit some people. And I don't know, people will get weirdly annoyed about it. But I also have guests that are really friendly. They're like, hey, can you let your dog out so we can say hi to him? Like, you know, so it's like, there's all kinds of kinds, you know, but you can't please them all. So
I was talking to someone about that yesterday because I was obviously reeling from our first 4-star review. And she has also hosted on Airbnb, and she was just like, People are people are people and you can't please them all. And it is the nature of hospitality, but it's
Yeah.
still hard in that moment to not feel some sort of way about it, which we will
Yeah,
get into.
yeah, it can feel personal sometimes, but I think I don't know. Yeah, I that's a hard one to manage. I'm so type A, like I just want to please everybody. I want everything to be perfect for everybody. And honestly, I feel like a lot of the times I get lower reviews, it's because people had expectations based on like their own preconceived notions, and had they just like read my listing, those expectations would have been managed, but they didn't, and so they expected something different, and then they showed up and they're like, it doesn't have a meadow in the front. I was expecting a meadow. And I'm like, there's no meadows next to the ocean, dude. Like, but like,
Did
that's
you
a real
see a picture
story.
of a meadow in front of
Like,
my
where did you get that impression? Literally the first sentence of my listing says on an acre of eucalyptus trees. I don't know why you thought that, but anyway, so it's like, it's just, you can't please them all. It's hard though when they're not like as happy as you want to be, especially when you care about them being happy.
That's it right there. I mean, I feel some sort of way about like, obviously, from a business perspective, we want our reviews to be good because it helps us book future guests. But at the end of the day, like when I get any sort of complaints, my first thought is like, man, I really wanted you to have a 5-star stay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's really hard especially when it's things out of your control that like it is where it is or whatever. And then you put it in your listing and then they didn't read it. You're like, damn, well,
The location rating is kind of difficult because as a host, you can't change it.
I know.
So
The
yeah, I
value
don't know.
rating is really tricky too, because I found the higher that our prices go, the harder it is. Like you just don't know what someone's subjective perspective on value is and whether or not they're getting their money's worth. And it's
Yep.
like, okay, do we lower our prices just to like make sure we get a good value rating? But then you're getting different people who still will think that's expensive, right? So there's like no way to really guard against that. It's such a
I gave up.
subjective category, I think.
Oh yeah, I gave up on value. I can't please them all. I've honestly found when I lower my rates, I get the lowest value ratings. And when I do like high price points that I wouldn't even pay for our place, people love it. So I'm like, I don't know. I give up.
I totally agree.
I genuinely wish when I lowered my rates, people were happier, but they're not. And I'm like, you guys make this so hard for me to lower my rates because
I
every time I
know.
do, I'm like shooting myself in the foot.
And this goes back to the people are people are people. It's like there literally are so many different types of people with such different relationships with money. Like I think about how I grew up and my parents were so frugal that like we only ever stayed at like budget hotels, right? So I can only imagine if they were to book something like this for a vacation, they would absolutely want it to be the best experience they ever had. So if anything went wrong or didn't live up to that, like they would probably feel like we only do this. However, like it's so tricky.
Yeah, it is. I just roll with it now. I'm like, I'm doing my best. I can't please them all. I'm just gonna roll with it.
That's such a good attitude to have. You are the person I needed to talk to today. So very helpful.
I've gotten to the point where I'm like, I have to let go. Like I'm like, I just gotta let go. It's not gonna be perfect for everyone. And honestly, I feel like people who have genuinely stayed at a lot of rentals like know that what I have here for them is a lot. It surpasses a lot of other rentals.
Yeah,
So so I'm like, you know what? They'll stay at another Airbnb someday and they'll realize how good they had it here.
that's absolutely right. Yes. So, how many years have you been hosting there now?
I started in like the very end of October 2019, and then
Okay.
COVID happened, like, right after, which was really fun.
Yeah.
Um,
So, four
so
years now. Okay. So, we're going to go through a bunch of categories and I want you to share your biggest tip. This is going to be a
okay,
hosting heavy podcast, but I think
all
that's great. Okay.
right.
What is your biggest tip for setting up your initial listing?
Okay, photos, which I mean, most people are gonna say, but I feel like there's a surprising amount of people with crummy photos. So
Yes.
photos just make you stand out. And as an experienced host, you'll realize that people are pretty much just looking at the photos and booking anyway. So I
Totally.
would say photos.
Can we zoom in on photos a little bit? What do you
Yes.
see are the biggest mistakes? When you say crummy photos, what does
Yeah.
that mean to you?
Grainy, poor quality, like not staged well, would be like the big ones for me.
Okay.
Just like dark glum kind of
Yeah.
looking. I'm like,
Lighting. Yep.
yes, yeah.
I think
So
wide angle lens is a big one. I don't think enough people use a wide angle lens. So you don't accurately replicate what that room feels like. You only get like little pieces of it, which I feel like is going to set people up for disappointment because their brain is going to fill in the gaps with an imaginary room. And then when they show up, if that real room doesn't match the imaginary room, they're like, what?
Yeah, I feel like wide angle lens like photos is just like a staple of real estate too. I like to have both though, because I feel like wide angle can like deceive people into thinking a room is larger than it is though. So I like
that is a good thing to look out for. I totally agree with you. Don't go too fisheye. And you don't have to like go and buy a big lens. Like the wide angle on the iPhone does the trick pretty well.
Yeah,
but if when you're looking at any of them, you're like, this looks a little bit warped, just don't use that one. But it works well on a lot of them. Yeah.
For sure. Yep.
Okay. Setting boundaries with challenging guests. What is your biggest tip on that?
As my listing states, blah, 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 blah. It's my go-to for that one. So I've learned over the years to be like pretty thorough in my listing, especially because of like my interactions with Airbnb, because they're like, well, your house rules don't say that, so we can't help you with that, basically. So I've learned to include certain like things in my house rules, like for example, if someone was to smoke, we charge a fine or whatever it might be. So I like outline specifics, because when I've needed Airbnb's assistance with things, had I not had these specifics written in my listing, they wouldn't have helped me with them. So I've learned that is a good way to get help with a problematic guest. And then I've also learned that it's nice to have, it sucks to have a long listing, I will say that, but it is really nice to have that to refer to. So like, say, I don't know, a guest shows up and they're smoking, and you can say, hey, as my listing states, we don't allow cigarette smoking on property, like please refer back to our house rules, you know. So it's kind of like it deflects it, like it takes it off of you and doesn't make it as like personal. It's like, hey, this was said, this was obviously stated, like please use our rules. So, but thankfully I don't feel like I have to do that too often. Most guests are great. So, but
yeah, I totally agree. So I don't have any cost of violating them on my profile. Should I be doing that?
I would, yeah, because I've had a handful of experiences with Airbnb where I had a problem, and if I didn't have like a fee outlined, Airbnb wouldn't help. But honestly, like I don't know that they would, even sometimes with it outlined. It doesn't hurt to have it, but and a lot of the time, like I'll have like a fee listed, and then when it comes down to it, I don't actually charge it, or I'll be like, hey, like we usually charge $100 fee for this, but I'll meet you in the middle, like here, $50, you know, or whatever it is. But I really try not to fine people. Like you'd have to do something pretty significant for me to ask you to pay, because there's like just the cost of doing business. But yeah,
I agree. I think the cost of doing business is a real thing. Like I'm never going to nickel and dime people for like someone messaged me the other day and they had broken our remote holder. It's like a little porcelain remote holder, and their 2-year-old had knocked it off the table. They're like, oh my gosh, we want to replace this for you. And I was like, please don't worry about it. Like,
I appreciate it, but like,
yeah, thank you so much for letting me know. Like, please don't worry about it. Anything less than like, honestly, $50, I'll probably just eat that cost. But if you like broke my cooktop, which has happened several times before, like I am going to have you pay for that repair, because that's like a, you know, but I think I've seen too many people not take into account the cost of business and just like nickel and dime. And that just doesn't build a good rapport, I don't think.
Yeah, or like something like, oh, the towels got stained. Like that's gonna happen. Like I just cover that, you know, unless it's like something super negligent, like, oh, we dumped wine all over every single white towel intentionally, like, you know, like then I might be like, yo, can you cover part of this? Like, what were you guys doing with the white towels? But like,
I'm so glad you had fun.
Yeah. Which there's been some situations where I'm like, what in the world? But anyways, but yeah, so generally speaking, I don't know. It's just hard. A lot of the time I just eat the cost of them. I will say I'm a little trigger shy on like asking people to cover costs too, because I had one of my worst experiences with that not like somewhat recently. So I'm like, I'll just kind of take the hit a lot of the time, because
tell me more.
Stop. We'll keep it. I'll try and keep it summarized. So basically showed up with a pet that they weren't supposed to have. Pet pissed everywhere, caused hundreds of dollars in damage. I like had to do a bunch of upholstery cleaning and everything, and I ended up getting like a new rug and all this, which is not cheap. And this is how insane this was. I asked the guest to cover $40 of what ended up being like $300 something in replacement and like cleaning damages. and they lost their mind over it and
they
went
weren't
like,
supposed to have a dog there. So they did not pay a pet fee either.
so we have a one pet policy. So they showed up with additional pet, and then they lied to me about it. And I was like, hey, we have one dog, like rule, whatever. They're like, oh, it's just here for the day when our friends, like, anyways. And I was like, okay, well, that's funny because it's been on property. We live here. They were walking.
You're literally there.
Yeah, like I'm sitting in my living room with my toddler and I'm seeing them in front of my living room window with multiple dogs the moment they checked in. I actually messaged her when they checked in. I was like, hey, is that black dog yours? Like, because I thought it might be a stray and I was going to go grab it if it was a stray. So, anyways, bottom line, they brought additional pets. So they pay a pet fee, but they just thought that meant they could bring pets. And then she went off on me about
in person.
In message. You could tell the keyboard was like clacking, when I asked her to pay $40 to cover like literally just my time to do all of the upholstery cleaning, right? And it's like it ended up being $100. Long story short, she fabricated, from what I could piece together from speaking to Airbnb, they were very cryptic about it, but she fabricated this story that basically made it sound like I had entered the space when they were renting it, and like I was spying on them when, mind you, I was just sitting in my living room and they walked in front of my window, and made it sound like I was just like doing things I shouldn't have, and got my listing banned from Airbnb
For how long?
I called them every day, multiple times a day. I was able to get it back up and running, I think like just after a week, which I heard is like record time because
That
I know
sounds
people
really
who
fast.
haven't heard back in like a week. So it was just like a really poor experience. And it was just like she basically told me, well, I paid a pet fee, so my pet should have been able to do any damages and it be covered. And I was like, that's not what a pet fee is for.
No, yeah.
So I have a very large pet fee now just because I find a lot of the time pets add up to more things to replace and clean, and I want to uphold the same standard, and so I just charge a larger pet fee, and if it works for people, great, and if not, then they can stay somewhere else, and it covers the expensive replacements and just like that stuff happening, and I won't have to ask again because I was like, that was horrible experience.
Right. And this is where horror stories can be really hard, I think, for potential host. Like you don't want to scare them out because that's such a small percentage of what normally happens, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I do think they can serve a purpose. One, for other hosts to just relate to and be like, okay, I'm not alone. But
Yeah.
two, I think from every one of those experiences, you learn something about like, okay, how do I protect myself in the future? So in your case, it was, I'm going to raise my pet fees, and that might mean people don't bring pets, and maybe that's okay for me.
Yeah.
What is the takeaway from that?
Yeah. But
Man.
people still pay and they still want to come with their pets. And I'm like, okay, well, again, if you guys want to pay, that's fine. But
Yeah.
I feel more protected doing it that way, and it's working fine that way. So, and I mean, I've had great people who were great with their pets come, but there were still damages. So it's just, pets are just kind of hard on stuff. We
Yeah.
love them. They're a little hard. So
Yeah. Yeah. Do you mind me asking what your pet fee is now?
yeah, it's 185.
Wow. Yeah.
Yep.
Mine is like $25 a pet. Well, at one of my cabins, I don't even charge a pet fee. It's
Yeah.
just you can bring, I have had guests bring 3 to 4 dogs before, and I don't charge a pet fee, which is probably a bad idea. But that was my first one. And I was like, well, I wish I didn't have to pay pet fees when I travel.
Yeah, I feel like 50% of the time I'm like replacing linens, like doing deep cleans, like and like with my cleaners. Like my cleaners are cleaning too, and I'm having to
Wow.
come in afterwards and like replace stuff and whatever because it just like can't undo damages, or like they scratch up the couch, whatever it is. Like it's just the nature of pet hosting, and like, like there's kind of like a wood ladder up to the loft, and like the dogs are like clawing at it, like it's just wear and
Yeah.
tear that you're gonna have to take care of, and it costs money to take care of that kind of stuff, or like the dog like jumping on the counter or running through the screen doors or whatever it is, like just
Whatever.
stuff happens.
Yeah.
So it's like, but yeah, and I mean, I think my pet fee is really large, but
Yeah.
I mean, I Googled before I started pet hosting, like what the average pet fee was, and it averaged between like 85 and 95. So I started there, and then I was getting so many pet bookings that I didn't want. I made it higher. I think I was like 135 for a little bit because I wanted less pet bookings, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um, and then that kind of lowered the amount trickling in. And then I had the really bad experience, and I was like, I'm about half the time I'm like replacing stuff after every pet stay, and this is getting a bit ridiculous. So I'm just gonna like up the cost of my pet fee to just cover that. So, but I feel like pet hosting is definitely like a trend right now as far as like what guests want. So if you want to make money and get more bookings, like you should do it. And
I was going to ask how that's impacted your bookings, because I do think that, like, if I had to guess, like 75% of our bookings have pets. And like hearing these stories makes me so grateful. I have virtually no horror stories, knock on wood, of like pet hosting. And we only charge $25. But that said, like our overall nightly price is like pretty high. So I always feel bad adding on like a ton more. But it is a large percentage of our bookings. Have you noticed a decrease in just occupancy in general since increasing that?
No, I book it usually 100% occupancy every month. It can get a little slower. I would say like my slowest month this year was probably like 89% occupancy. So it really hasn't impacted it much. I would say if anything, pet hosting has helped my occupancy because this year's been slower than some. So I get bookings with the pets. And then it's like I was finding I was dropping my rates down more to bring bookings in. And then the pet fee would kind of equalize that difference in cost anyway. So I mean, sometimes like I had a booking yesterday come in. My rate had dropped to 150 a night because it was a low demand weekday, and the pet fees they paid more for a pet fee than they did per the nightly rate. But it like, it all equates across the board. So they ended up being like, I don't know, whatever it was night, but yeah, so I don't know, it's working, and so I'm just not gonna ask questions.
Yeah. I think this is such a good example of our pet fees and policies are so different, but they're each working for us, right? I think that's such a good takeaway for just hosts listening, that there is absolutely no one size fits all of how to navigate this. It's really figuring out your property, your personal preferences, what you're willing to deal with and what you aren't willing to deal with, and then using all of these different tools to kind of make that work for you, which leads to my next question, because this is something that I don't do. What is your biggest tip for using discounts to increase occupancy? I noticed on your Instagram, I was looking at a lot of your posts and there were, oh, last minute, like we'll give you this percent off, use this code or whatever. How do you do that? How do you manage that?
How do I manage my discounts?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I will say my Instagram, the most interaction I get is from property owners mostly. So, but when I get my guest population that follows me talking to me, they want discounts. So I offer them because I know my following that's interested in staying at my place wants like a discount, right? They're seeking that. And I feel like so much of what I hear from people online that isn't me talking to like other property owners is people wanting a discounted stay, wanting to stay for like working with me, whatever it might be. So much of the noise over there is that. So I started offering discounts. I honestly don't feel like people take advantage of them very often. Because my view towards discounts is I don't do them unless it's within the month typically. And they're dates that I don't have, like I don't know a book. Like if it's a weekend, I'm probably not offering a discount. If it's a holiday, I'm not offering a discount. But if it's like a day that's booking slower, I'd like to get it booked. It'd be easier for me to get my cleaner scheduled this far out. I'll just like throw a discount up and see if people take it or not. And so I found, honestly, I think I get more traffic from Airbnb when I drop my rates with discounts. So I found like when I fluctuate my rates around, people tend to like snatch them up over there. Yeah, so when I hold like a stagnant rate, I feel like my listing is just kind of stagnant, and when I fluctuate my rates, I get like more movement over there. So that's kind of part of why I do discounts, is because I've found when I'm changing my rates around, I get more traffic to my listing. So, and the nice thing about it too is like I can have a price range that works for a whole variety of people, so it's like the people that need the lower end can grab that when it comes up, and the people who don't, not like, doesn't matter, they can just book, so it's just like it. So I'll throw them out. I have an email list. I'll throw it out on my email list. I'll throw it out on my Instagram, and I'll edit it on my property management software and just, see what works out.
Okay. Is that one of your secrets to 100% occupancy?
I think my secret to 100% occupancy is a unique place, honestly. I think I'm a big fish in a small sea, for one. Um, like we live in a small town. There's not a ton of unique stay options. There's places I would say with more ideal location. There's a handful of them that have like a nice aesthetic, but none of them have like really the character and the amenities I offer. So I think I'm a big fish in a small sea. So that helps. And then we're close to the Big Sur coast, so that might help. A lot of road trippers up and down. We're between, LA and San Francisco, so I get guests from both of those. So, and we're right next to Morro Rock, which is a pretty well-known Central Coast tourist destination. So I think that helps too. So
what
I think
town are you in?
Los Osos. So Morro Bay, where Morro Rock is the harbor ocean side, and Los Osos is on the bay side of that.
So you're right near San Luis Obispo?
That's our county, yeah. So there's San Luis City, and we're located in San Luis Obispo County.
Okay. Yeah. One of my good friends from North Carolina moved out there years ago, and I thought it was just this like small little town out there. Yeah. I visited once. It's beautiful. I didn't realize you were so close to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So that location helps. And it is very central. Like if you're driving the coast from San Francisco to LA, you're right in the middle.
Yeah. So I think those are huge factors in getting bookings in. But I think being proactive on my listing and not just putting my settings in and letting it sit is a huge reason why I book. And I kind of I'll change nightly minimums, I'll change nightly rates, I'll, send out emails, I'll post on social media. It's just I'm always fiddling with stuff essentially. Yeah. So I think that's part of it. And, I'll test the waters with one thing and see if that helps bookings come up. And if it does, I'll keep doing it. And I'll test the waters with one thing. If it doesn't do anything, I won't do that again, So it's just yeah.
What's the biggest thing you've added to your repertoire, that you tested and you were surprised? Wow, that really.
Pets. Yeah. As soon as I went pet friendly, I think I got 3 or 4 pet bookings within 20 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah, 20 minutes, dude. I was like, whoa, that was quick. I was not expecting.
Did you announce it on Instagram, or that many people were searching with the pet only filter on?
If I remember correctly, I did not announce it on Instagram because I wanted to see how it did just on its own. I waited and then I announced it on Instagram. So yeah.
That is a crazy number if you're thinking about just Airbnb traffic, just general traffic that would book that quickly.
Yeah, okay, I have my stripes with OTAs, but it's a good marketing platform for sure.
Yeah. Wait, yeah. OTA?
Online travel agencies, Airbnb, VRBO,
HipCamp. I haven't never heard that term.
Oh yeah, okay. They're called OTAs.
Okay, online this is so good to know.
That's what you call the sites. I learned it when I started property management software. I didn't know what it meant either. I was like, I'm a host and I didn't even know what this meant.
I know, me neither. I've never heard that. Okay, that's going to take me to my next one because it sounds like you are a big fan of direct booking and I have not used it. I'm not a big fan of it. So I genuinely am open to being won over. I just haven't been won over yet. Talk us through, let's start with getting it set up. How hard was that for you? What's your biggest tip?
Admittedly, it's hard, especially if you're not a software person or a techie person, but I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm not tech savvy. I'm really not, but, I figured it out. So I feel like anybody can figure it out, but it's definitely a hurdle. Because it's the property management software, you get your software and then you have to connect it with integration. So you have to connect it to certain things to have features you want. I mean, you could just use it to book direct, but you have to connect it to a payment processor. Right. You have to I wanted it to have certain features. So I connected it so that I could upsell amenities. I connected it to MailChimp so I could be collecting email subscriber information. You can connect it to lock software so that it automates your locks and sends out messages for that. So there's a lot of different things that you kind of have to get going, or insurance, you have to connect it to an insurance. Well, at least for me, I did. So you could not do that, but I wanted it to function with certain features. So you have to connect all that. And it was kind of a lot to grasp and organize and conceptualize if you don't know anything about websites and software, which was me. But yeah, once you're past setting it up though, it's pretty simple.
What's your biggest tip for setting it up?
Research your property management software options and go with one that has the best customer service from moment one.
Oh, so that's a good one.
Yeah.
Because you will be reaching out to them.
Yes.
So who do you use?
I use Hostfully. Okay. And the reason I went with them is because I think they had very good sales and very good customer service. So they knew how to communicate with people and pull them in and be interactive. And they are constantly available via chat box. They when I signed up, you had 3 Zoom meetings. So I would work on my website and getting everything set up. And I would have a list of questions and I would go in and be I don't understand this. And they would sit down with me and explain it all. and then I could set it up and do it with them on the call, or maybe do what I could off the call. And so that, I think, was a unique like assistance that you probably don't get with a lot of property management software. And I knew I was going to need that because I wasn't experienced in the software realm. So that was super helpful. So if you see that the property management software is interactive and is helpful and is available, go for it, because like that is so key to being successful. And it's like, if say something's not running well, like who do you reach out to? If you're like, there was a few companies, I won't name them, but
no, please name them.
I mean, I tried to talk to Guesty and Hostaway, and I couldn't get a reply back on email. So I was like,
okay, I
this
use Guesty now, not for direct bookings though. So that would be my obvious go-to.
Yeah.
That's really good to know.
They seem well liked, but depends on who you talk to. I've heard both, but yeah, so for me, I was like, I can't even get a reply. What happens if, I have a booking issue? I'm trying to have, like I've had glitches and things come up with Hostfleet, and I hear back from someone, they help me through it. Maybe they're like, oh, okay, we're working on it, whatever. Like there's communication where some of the other companies, you don't get it, which is like, it's the core of running your business. Like you need to be able to get help. So that's important. That was one of the most important things to me. Plus, Hostfully had every feature I wanted. So,
okay, how long have you been with them?
I think it'll be 3 years in February.
How has their customer service been over the past 3 years?
Good.
No complaints.
Nope.
Okay.
Sometimes it's like a glitch that they can't fix in the moment, but that's just the nature of software.
Okay.
But they're always there and working on it and communicative. And
that's all I care about. That's the same thing as hosting, right? Like I actually don't think our guests expect us to be perfect. I think they expect us to take their stay seriously and care about it as much as they do. And as long as you're doing that, I think most things can be overcome. So I probably feel the same way about most like things that I pay for.
Yeah. Yep. But I don't know. I agree.
Okay. I have more questions on direct booking.
Let's hear it.
Do you think what percentage do you think of your bookings are direct via not? And do you offer direct for everyone, or do they have to have stayed with you in the past?
I offer direct for everybody. I think the stigmatism around people having to have good reviews and having stayed with you before can be, I understand why hosts want to do it that way, but here's the thing. I've found direct booking is significantly more personal than Airbnb or VRBO or other OTAs. So I've found that my guests that book direct with me are usually kinder, more communicative, and more respectful because it's more personal. It's not like I just booked this on this big website that's, Airbnb's branded, like people call vacation rentals Airbnbs. Like they don't call them vacation rentals or short-term rentals, like,
right.
So yeah, it's very big, which is powerful for marketing. But I also think that it creates this like disconnect and like almost like sometimes you get a more entitled, disrespectful guest because there's this disconnect. Like it's a business transaction, whatever. I booked it. I'm entitled to it. I get a lot of that vibe from those types of guests.
That is so fascinating. I think you're right.
But that's like the beauty of short-term renting, right? Like it's this more personalized experience with a host and their house, and like that people have made it more of like a business model, but I think there's a lot more power in like this small hospitality bubble, So I think that there is people that are seeking that more business like thing, but that like I think the beauty of Airbnb is like it's someone's home. They can give you local recommendations. There's character, like all this stuff. And it's like, if you're pulling in most of your bookings from Instagram, which was like, I was getting a lot of requests for it. They wanted to book direct. So I'm like, why am I putting my time, effort, energy, money into marketing for myself just to pull that business over to Airbnb, who then takes a % from my guest and from me? Like, why am I doing that? So like, it's like, if I'm doing this for myself, I should be bringing myself this money, on top of not building your business on borrowed land, is what I say. Because I'm like, I've now had the experience of getting shut down on Airbnb. I was still up and running on all the other platforms. People could still book me. My business still existed elsewhere, So it's like, and it's like,
thank God.
Yeah. And what really made me think about it was when there was the lockdowns and they just gave a bunch of people's cancellation fees back and screwed over a ton of property owners. I personally can make ends meet without my Airbnb or like booking income, but it helps. And so I was in a position where I didn't have a mortgage I couldn't no longer pay because it's one mortgage. So we pay our bills with other work, but it helps. And so I saw that happening to other hosts and I was like, wow, okay, at the end of the day, like I appreciate this corporation. It helps me a lot, but it is a corporation that's going to serve itself when it needs to,
And it did. It served itself and guests. I will say that it feels like guests are always the priority because I was someone who was paying a mortgage and an electric bill and like everything for my property. And they just refunded every single stay I had for like 2 months.
For those hosts. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, I mean, the first month I was joking about this with someone recently is that I'm finally getting over the anxiety of 2020 because I ran my own business and had a rental property. And all of a sudden within 1 week, it was like clients are calling to pull out of contracts and Airbnb is telling me that they're going to refund every guest regardless of my cancellation. And I was like, what?
Why does that exist then? Why do we have cancellation policies if you're not going to honor them? Like we established the cancellation policies we need for us and our business and our bills, So anyway, so that's what
if they want to do it. Like if they want to do that and take it out of their own money to refund everyone. Right. But they didn't. That's what was hard.
I don't even think they gave back. This is what really pissed me off. I don't even think they gave back their service fees. So they kept their service fees and then they refunded all of the host money is what I read.
True.
I think so. I remember reading that. I don't know 100%, but I remember reading that. So, and I remember getting an email from VRBO or Verbo, whatever the hell you're supposed to call it now. Verbo. And they said, hey, we're going to give back our service fees and reimburse that to guests, but we're also going to honor hosts' cancellation policy, but we encourage them to give money back. So which
would have been fine. So I get so few VRBO bookings that I don't think I dealt with that at all. But I think as a human who cares about other humans, I probably would have offered to split it. Like, okay, I'm going to give 50% back, which I would not normally otherwise have done to recognize that this is a hard time for all of us. And I'm going to use the 50% to help pay those bills. Because now my primary income is also gone because clients are canceling their projects. Like, how am I supposed to get through that, Yep.
Totally. Yeah. So that was what really made me think about shifting to direct booking. I think you also asked how many direct bookings I get.
Yes. What percentage?
It depends on the month. Some months it's 30% and sometimes it's 10%. Sometimes I might not get it. It really just depends on the month. So sometimes I might not get any. Sometimes it's hard to beat Airbnb to get those dates booked direct because I get more marketing over there. But it really varies. I would say I'm 80% Airbnb, 15% direct across the year, and the other 5 is miscellaneous other OTAs that I don't love. But yeah,
all those.
So OTAs. It's an easy overarching term.
I love it. I'm going to use it all the time now. Okay, Candice, I have a hard stop at 5:00, but we are not done. Okay. I am wondering, can we put another date on the calendar in like the next week so that we can chat more?
Yeah.
Okay. This is so helpful. I mean, for me and I think for people listening.
Cool.
And I don't want to just throw out the rest of these questions. Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.